Big, beautiful bills, ugly, nasty communism, a Bezos star-studded wedding, alligator Alcatraz, and so much more. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the show on YouTube at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Without further ado, the show starts now. So it's been quite the weekend for sure. The big, beautiful bill is on track for passage, we think. Even though your usual suspects are decrying the Medicaid cuts while simultaneously bitching about the debt and the deficit, look, the bill isn't perfect. Good luck getting a perfect bill out of Congress or any Congress, but it's good enough. The most important thing is this bill does fund border enforcement and deportations. Yes, that is even more important than extending the Trump tax cuts. And to me, it's obvious why, because tax cuts are great. They're needed. They're necessary. But if we don't secure our borders and get these illegals out of our country, the burden will not only bankrupt us, it will move us yet another step closer to being the richest third world looking nation on earth. And that's not an exaggeration. And I realize the Medicaid stuff is really in the weeds for a lot of us, but let me just say this. There is no reason hardworking Americans should be endlessly subsidizing able-bodied adults, and especially illegals, who choose not to work or work hard, just period. It's also worth noting that this bill doesn't cut Medicaid. Medicaid has ballooned into such a scam-ridden, fraudulent, money-laundering enterprise that these so-called cuts just cut down on that. Medicaid growth still is and has been outpacing inflation. Let me also add that while Democrats just insist up and down that illegals aren't abusing Medicaid and insist that they just suck off state Medicaid programs, they conveniently fail to mention that anchor babies, children born to illegal alien parents, are eligible for Medicaid and CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Programs. Biden brought in at least 10 million illegals in just 4 years. You really think those illegals, plus the 1 to 3 anchor babies they've had since they've been here, aren't stressing our healthcare system? Do you live in the land of delusion? So if you are worried that vulnerable Americans are going to see program cuts, then you, more than anyone else, should be rooting for mass deportations and border security. But as for the Democrats, now, watch how pissed they get about our border being secure now.
You know, border crossings are at a record low. Do you give the Trump administration some credit for that? And are you, when you look at those figures, do you think things are moving in the right direction, at least in that regard, Senator?
No, I don't give them credit for that, because border crossings are low because they're violating the law every day. So we have a law in this country that says if you are fleeing terror or torture from another country, you can come here and apply for asylum. The Trump administration has suspended that law. They are not allowing anybody to come here to apply for asylum. We wrote that bipartisan bill last year to reform the asylum process, to make sure that only the right people are coming in and that we judge those cases expeditiously at the border. So it's true, there are very few people crossing on a daily basis, but that's because the Trump administration is violating the law. And it should matter to every American that on so many facets, the Trump administration doesn't care about the law.
Yeah, he wants to import more of the third world here for you to take care of. Yeah, you just heard a Democrat senator, no shock there, proclaim that it's the Trump administration who is lawless because the Trump administration is enforcing our border and our immigration laws. That's what gets Murphy's panties in a twist. And he has the tone-deaf audacity to say the secure border and an end to the worldwide American invasion is what will make our country unrecognizable. Has he looked around lately at what is actually making our country look unrecognizable? You know, there will come a time in the next election cycle where Democrats will insist they don't want open borders. Remind them of their own words. They hate that our border is secure now. Everything that happened under Joe was intentional, and they'll do it again, and probably 10 times worse. Joining me now to weigh in on all of it is Breitbart editor-in-chief, our friend Alex Marlow. Alex, great to see you.
Tomi, great to be back on your show.
Alex, I don't even know where to begin. You're the perfect person. Listen, I understand that most of America is maybe a little bored with the big, beautiful bill stuff because it's in the weeds for a lot of people. They just want to know where their tax cut's going to be. They want to know, that money is going to the right things that they voted for. But a lot of it is in the weeds when you start talking about like provider, healthcare, tax, and all of this. Like most people, they don't want to get into that because it's a lot, right? But the Democrat narrative is Republicans are going to cut Medicaid and Medicare, and seniors and disabled people and vulnerable people, they're going to be left out in the cold. Rural hospitals are going to close. That's the narrative. I don't think Republicans have done a good enough job of pushing back, but please help my audience understand what the big, beautiful bill really does to those programs.
Yeah, first of all, this bill is an amazing bill as far as these bills go, but that is the world's tallest midget phenomenon. It's just one of these things where I've been in this game for 17 years in journalism, and this is probably my favorite bill that I've seen, but that's really not saying a whole lot. But the reason why I like it, before we get in the Medicaid thing, is massive tax cuts that are, if we let the Trump tax cuts expire, it'll be the biggest tax hike in American history. Huge funding for border security, more ICE agents, more ICE detention facilities. So those are the top two. But 80 million new acres of oil and gas and coal and offshore drilling and nuclear. We're going to get nuclear energy, which I've always wanted nuclear energy. We don't build any nuclear energy in this country. We're going to get new timber sales from America instead of importing them from overseas. Like, why are we importing timber from overseas? Just ridiculous. All of that is in there, and it's all going to be nice. And then there's all these beginning to scratch the surface of unwinding some of the horrible spending levels that Democrats have enshrined, and those really come in two places: the Green New Scam stuff, all the green energy stuff from Biden administration, and Medicaid, which is, I was trying to run the numbers on this over the weekend. I think we have about 35 million people on Medicaid who shouldn't be on it given the original intention of the program. So how do we get some of them off? And you start creating some criterion, like you've got, if you're able-bodied and you're above the poverty line, you don't have dependents, and you're trying to work, you can't get it. Like, it's just one of these things where you've got to get a job if you want to go and get the Medicaid, and if you don't have any other reason not to go get a job. We get an unemployment rate in the 4%. So it's not one of these scenarios where if you can't go get if you can try to go get a job, you can find one in this country at this time. So it's one of these things where if you're able-bodied and you're not trying to work, you don't get to just leech off the government entirely. And that, for some people, will be framed as we're putting rural hospitals out of business. I really don't think it's going to come to that, Tommy. I think this is going to be a very minor reform of something that probably needs a major reform. We just don't have the political capital to do it right now. But it's very tough to message this, I have to say. As a media person, it's tough for me to figure out how do you sell that to the public. Is not easy to do, but it's necessary to start this process.
Well, and I think the point about illegals sucking off the program is an important one. You know,
Absolutely.
When you look at the expansion of Medicaid, that's happened for many reasons. But for people who don't want to acknowledge the fact that we've imported millions and millions and millions of people into this country who have then dropped anchor babies that we're also paying for, it's like, oh, I wonder why all of our programs are bankrupt. Well, maybe it's because we've imported the third world and we're taking care of them. And I love when people say, oh, but they're paying taxes. The amount of taxes that they may be paying does not cover the bill that they're giving the American taxpayer. So let's get the illegals off these programs. Let's deport the illegals. I think that's a great start. But also, I think there needs to be a real conversation in this country about just how expansive Medicaid has become, to your point. All these people that are taking advantage. And I think Republicans would do a better job, because no one likes to talk about people being kicked off their health care and this. But when you say, listen, this program is not meant for people who could be working. It's not meant for people who could be working harder. It's meant for people who can't work. It's meant for people who are truly vulnerable or disabled or have an inability. It's not meant for people who just want to spend more time at home. So
yes, exactly.
It's frustrating to me that that's impossible for Republicans to do, to message that. Most people are pissed off at the notion that there are lazy people taking advantage of them. Why not start there with the messaging?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're picturing it as, some woman with some health condition who's got 3 kids, and her husband, who she really loved and they had a great marriage, died in a car crash. Like that's not what's going on. We get a lot of people who are there who are just trying to figure out how much of government funds they can get so they can do very little. And those people shouldn't be on the program. And people who are genuinely qualified, we're fine with that. The problem is there's, of the 35 million number, I mean, how many of those people are legitimately qualified? It's not that many. And to your point about who pays for stuff, Let me speak to you about this. I'll use a personal example because my wife is a oncologist and she trained at a county hospital in LA for part of her training. And so when she's treating cancer patients, a lot of these people are illegal aliens. And when they show up to the hospital, they get the exact same care as you and I would get. It's just we have no idea who's going to pay for it. And so I'm in LA, so it's flooded with illegal aliens, millions of them. And some of the procedures, like bone marrow transplants, which are relatively frequent, those cost about $700,000 a piece to do. $700,000. So who's paying for this stuff? Of course, it's the government. And by the government, we mean it's you and me. It's the citizens, the taxpayers. Those are the people who are paying for that. And do you think that's okay? And if so, how many of these procedures do you think are okay? 700 grand a pop going on the government dole that is supposed to be, covered by the rest of us. Of course, none of us actually think that's okay, and you're lying if you do. So can we start chipping away at it? And I think this bill at least is beginning that process.
Yeah, Alex, so let's say I go to Mexico illegally. You think they'd pay for my cancer treatments? Just a wild question for you.
I don't know what the rules are down there, but I know you're not getting the treatment that you're getting here in LA.
Yeah, no kidding. It's frustrating. There needs to be an honest conversation about it, and I wish that some Republicans had the balls to have that conversation, to say, listen, we have compassion for everybody, but we got to have compassion for our citizens first. They have to come first and foremost. And there are a lot of people who are very disgruntled about all the things being afforded to illegals. There's a lot of Black and Hispanic Americans who are really pissed off about the things being afforded to illegals. So start there with your messaging. I think that Republicans are horrible. Like, they automatically have this guilt complex that it's like, we can't explain why we want to cut lazy people or illegals off of programs. No, just have some balls and explain it to people, because most people are going to be right there with you, but they lack the intestinal fortitude to even have the conversation. So the Democrats run away with the narrative. And that's why we lose when we talk about Medicaid.
Yeah, this is something that happened with immigration, where we for years talked about illegal immigration as, the South Park joke, they took our jobs, which wasn't totally effective. So what we started to do at Breitbart is we started to talk about the humanitarian crisis and how we were enabling a black market run by cartels, some of the worst people on the planet, who were taking advantage of human beings, who were raping women, who were putting people through essential slavery, and then they were coming to America and then taking money from the American economy and sending it back to these horrible people. And we were enabling all of that with our open border. And once you start framing the issue that way, all of a sudden you start pulling some people who aren't necessarily hardcore MAGA conservatives, and you start thinking, wait a minute, that argument resonates with me. Then you add that illegal immigration causes a housing crisis for working class and poor people because it drives up their wages. And that resonates with people. And then you start talking about how it's actually driving, it drives up their rent. And then it drives down their wages because there's more competition for working class whites and working class blacks in their communities because we've imported cheap labor to compete with them. And then you have the white collar stuff where now that's driving down the wages of working class, of white collar Americans who went to universities and got educated and paid too much and took out loans. And now they're losing out on a job because we imported someone from India, let's say, who will do the job for 20% less. Once you start messaging in those ways, all of a sudden you don't sound like a right-wing politician. You sound like a humanitarian. You sound like someone who wants fairness and justice. And we do got to nail that before we take some of these arguments out to the broader public.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make. I guess I'm too much of a hard ass. The humanitarian stuff, that comes second to me. But
we had you, Tomi. We already had you. You're already with us.
But that's my thing, though. But I personally, I think you're right on the humanitarian stuff for the fluffy people in LA. But I think most Americans, at least in middle America and in the South, that aren't all the way there on it, I think once you tell them they're being ripped off, it really pisses them off. So for me and my people, that you're getting ripped off is a great message. And then for the more fluffy people, the bleeding hearts, the humanitarian stuff, we can do both. We can have both messages, but the underlying issue is seal the border and deport. I want to move on to, it seems like 2 years ago already with this Supreme Court ruling, and we didn't get a ruling on anchor babies yet. That's probably going to come in the fall, but we did get a ruling on the nationwide injunctions. But there's somebody over at MSNBC, and she is very, very mad about this. Let me see if you can tell just how mad Simone Sanders is.
I can't believe that we are asking the question, is the 14th Amendment to the Constitution constitutional? That is what, it is crazy. And I am sorry, but people need to call, this is crazy. They're asking us not to believe our own eyes and our own ears. They're asking us to go against everything that we know to be true. This is insane.
Again, if you just take that clip out of context there and you don't talk about the anchor baby and the 14th Amendment stuff, the whole, they want us not to believe our own eyes and ears. I believe she worked for Kamala. She was in the Biden administration. They didn't want us to believe our own eyes and ears about flailing vegetable Joe Biden and inflation and the open border and everything else. So that's really rich coming out of her very large mouth. But what do you make of just how passionate, at least she pretends to be, about protecting anchor babies?
Yeah, it's because they know that the great replacement theory is real and the Democrats are not going to win unless they import new voter bases and pander to them and try to buy their votes with various handouts and programs in coddling. And that's it, because they're not having that many children. And when they do, the older they get, they end up voting conservative and Republican. So that is their plan, is that they have to keep birthright citizenship so that they could keep having more anchor babies and chain migration and make it easier to become a voter. And they want to water down the concept of a citizen, and they want to make it all about just being a mere resident of an area means you have the right to vote and to vote Democrat. That's the whole point. But there's the 14th Amendment, she's just completely misreading it. I don't know if she's an attorney. I'm not, but I can read. But the whole crux of it is, in order to be a citizen by birth, you have to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which means that this has to be your home and your parents' home. And it's very clear. We were talking at the time when the 14th Amendment came out about black slaves who were here and who did not have the right to vote, even though they were subject to our jurisdiction. People who come in illegally from, Guatemala and then just arrive here and 5 minutes later they have a baby. To suggest that that baby is subject to our jurisdiction is, of course, absurd. And hopefully the Supreme Court figures that out and rules that way. I don't have confidence they will, to be honest with you. But there's moves we can make in the Congress. And so I think that I have hope on this issue in general. But the alarm over it is just so false, because any honest reading of the 14th Amendment would suggest it does sort of look like we've got it wrong.
Yeah. I hate when Republicans overuse the term DEI hire. I think it's overused. Yeah. But in the case of Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, I don't know, Alex, is she the dumbest Supreme Court justice we've ever had? Because reading her dissent was, it was pretty wild. Even it doesn't take a legal mind to know that she's insane. And there's others, obviously, that dissented, but hers, I loved. And I'm not actually a big fan of Justice Amy Coney Barrett. I'm really not in a lot of cases. But her slapdown of KBJ was just epic. But I really want to know, do you think that Ketanji Brown Jackson is the dumbest Supreme Court justice we've ever had?
Clearly. And Tommy, this is so exciting for me because on Thursday, I announced my next book, which is called Breaking the Law. People will see my new art on my set here, people who are watching. And I spent a year investigating the Supreme Court and the lawfare against Donald Trump. And I've been living in this world mentally for months and months and months. And hopefully it comes out in a few weeks. Hopefully we could talk more about it when it does. But it's one of these things where Amy Coney Barrett is largely a villain in it. There's so many instances where she disappoints. And I hold her up as an example of how we can do better with our picks. And I offer solutions how to do better with our picks. Even though in general, I think Trump's picks were terrific. But that one was on an A+. And I walked through why, but she's an incredibly frustrating figure to me, having been living this life for the last year. But her takedown of Ketanji Brown Jackson, I've never seen anything like it. It was the single biggest smackdown of a sitting colleague on the Supreme Court in the history of this country, and absolutely deserved. Tommy, you've heard me say in the show, I always start from a premise of respecting the left and respecting how they got their power with their terrible ideas and how they've been able to take over so much of the country with these bad ideas. And we should come from that perspective. But she's a dumb libtard. That's all there is to it. You can't read these decisions and feel like this is a bright person. And so all we can do, we're pretty much powerless, but we do have one power with Ketanji Brown Jackson. We can make fun of her, and we have to. We have to have a great time making fun of her for as long as she stays on the bench, which is going to be a while. And she's going to keep giving us opportunities because she is dumb.
I really do think she is. And I say that about only a few people on the left, because I, like you, think most people on the left are actually very, very smart, but maybe for demonic reasons. And there are many that we could name of all colors and all genders and all sexual persuasions. But when it comes to Kamala Harris and Ketanji Brown Jackson, those two people I actually think are dumb. And maybe they're educated, but I think that there's a big problem. We're going to get into this when we talk about this, Mamdani. I think there's a big difference between being educated and being smart. You can be educated till the cows come home. You can take a test. You can go to many, many years of college. I don't think that that necessarily makes you a smart person. It might make you an intellectual person, but it does not make you a smart person. I want to save that discussion when we get to this communist. The last thing I want to talk about on immigration, though, is I love Stephen Miller. He's kind of like me, less humanitarian, more ripoff type of person talking about immigration. But I loved his smackdown of Elizabeth Warren when she was talking about, oh no, the Haitians, you know, their temporary protected status is going to come to an end. And what he said to me is just so perfect. Essentially, for those who can't read the type, I'm sure you know, he's saying we've got so many problems in Haiti, and Haiti is such a horrible place. Why would you want to import Haiti into our community? And I think that that was a fantastic explanation. Very simplistic, but very right on target.
He's so bright, and I've known Stephen since I was in high school. We both were in the Larry Elder broader universe when we were younger and growing up, and that guy's been right on everything. He's a truly committed, and you're right about this. He is truly a smackdown guy. He's not into the touchy-feely anything, which is fine with me. A-okay. He's the perfect guy to be in the spot that he's in. And he raises, though, a highly logical point, which is if these places are so horrible, why are we importing so many people from them? And liberals think because we need to coddle them, because we all have bleeding hearts and we want to take care of the whole world. But that's not realistic. And anyone who's realistic knows that as wealthy and powerful and as amazing as America is, we can't take all the impoverished people around the world and port them here. It does not work. It does not make any sense. It's no way to run a country. And once he throws that in Warren's face, what is her retort? Is it she has, yeah, but still? I mean, what else is she supposed to say? She's got no pushback to that at all. And she won't, but she's not making an intellectual argument. She's making an argument about the Trump bad, Miller bad, illegal immigrants good, any immigrant good, Americans not that good. And then, you know, she's a fake Indian. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. I want to get right into this Mamdani stuff. So I'm very curious your take on it all. I know a lot of Republicans in media, a lot of conservatives in media, in the influencer space, they kind of love this idea of him because he may very well take down the larger Democrat Party. And we're seeing Democrats start to distance themselves from him. And I think that on that whole, like, owning the libs thing, that's great that we have somebody like him, like Jasmine Crockett, like AOC, that we're like, look at these people, they're clowns. But it's also deeply unsettling because of the number of people that he has in this country who agree with him. And not just people that come from foreign nations, but people who were born and bred in the United States that have gone to our elite universities that think this guy is great. I'm very concerned. I don't know if you think he'll win or not, but what do you think this means for America, not just for this election, but for the next 5-10 years?
Well, I always like sunlight. So when you have someone who's out there who's saying we need to seek the means of production, we need to, to commandeer the means of production, whatever the quote was, we need to ban all guns. His obsession with the trans stuff, that him pandering by eating food with his hands, which is he doesn't need to eat food with his hands, but he eats it with his hands, not to make some cultural point, but just to grandstand and virtue signal. I like when guys like that are out there because it shows you on the far extreme just how nutty and unpalatable and truly un-American a lot of these left-wing ideas are. Communism is not compatible with this society. So I actually do like to see it. I'm in the group that is accelerationist when it comes to New York. I think New York got ruined, and they seem fully committed to ruining themselves. So I would rather us not get to have as good of a time when we visit New York for a little while and to see what this experiment would take place. But of course, New York can get themselves out of this. They need to consolidate probably around Mayor Adams or a Cuomo. I don't think it's going to be a Curtis Lewa, even though he seems like a great job, but he seems like a great guy. But they got to pick someone. They got to commit to it, and then Mamdani won't win. But if they run 3 other kind of decent candidates, he could win. So it really could happen. So if there's 4 credible people in a general, he could absolutely win with a plurality of votes. So I think it's a genuine threat. And his values are very scary. I don't like anything that he stands for at all. But I do like let's see what the left truly believes and let's broadcast that all over the world, because they don't always say the quiet part out loud. A lot of the time we know they don't like this country. We know they don't like the Jews. We know that they want to take our guns. They know that they don't like the idea of people being successful, that they feel like there should be a cap on success, i.e. no billionaires. And so it's nice when someone actually says it. And so that to me is a relief. But these ideas are terrible, toxic ideas. And he's quite charismatic and confident the way he states it, which is compelling relative to the Dick Durbins and the Chuck Schumers and the leadership of the Democrat Party, the Hakeem Jeffries, who speaks in that staccato-like voice, where everything he says, he speaks like this. Like, no one talks like that. And Mamdani sounds like a guy that you went to college with who you thought was kind of cool. And I think that that's really
not me,
interesting.
Alex, not me. Maybe we went to different colleges, but I would think this guy was a snake no matter where I saw him, no matter where I heard him. He doesn't sound good to me at all. He sounds dangerous to me. Now, I take your point well taken about, hey, we need to expose this. We need to show what the left really has become. Yeah, that's great if you can do that, but you also have to control the mass immigration invasion, because we're importing people who think like this and feel this way. So these people could actually win in the next 5 to 10 years if we keep importing people who think like this into our country. And we keep educating the ones that we have at institutions that also push that kind of ideology, then we're in for a real problem. There's a couple things I want to play because I think it's so important. First of all, Mamdani was asked 3 times if he would condemn the phrase globalize the Intifada. He would not do it. For those who missed it, take a look for yourself.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights. And ultimately, that's what is the foundation of so much of my politics, the belief that freedom and justice and safety are things that, to have meaning, have to be applied to all people, and that includes Israelis and Palestinians alike.
But do you actually condemn it? I think that's the question and the outstanding issue that a number of people, both of the Jewish faith and beyond, have. Do you condemn that phase, globalize the Intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers who have shared their concerns with me, especially in light of the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado.
Quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president, who is looking to do those very kinds of things, putting people in jail for writing an op-ed, putting them in jail for protesting. Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about. And what I will do is showcase my vision for the city through my words and my actions.
So 3 times he was asked just to condemn the phrase globalize the Intifada. He could not do it. He would not do it. He added a lot of fluff and a lot of BS in there, okay, to try to soften it, but he wouldn't answer the question. Alex, why do you think that is?
Yeah, because he's for it. I think the guy is deeply anti-Semitic. I think he does not like Jewish people. I don't think he likes the Jewish state. Doesn't think he likes the idea of it. And if he had the power to change it, that I think that he would, at a minimum, I think there would be no Israel. And I think that at worst, who knows what would happen to American Jews and in our society with a guy like this in charge. But I like that he's out there doing it because we get to see it, because I honestly believe this is a mainstream viewpoint in left-wing power structures in this country, and it's remained a secret. And I think that he is really kind of spilling the beans in a way. And I feel like this is a big opportunity for us to point out this is what Democrats believe. This is our biggest city in the country, their Democrat primary. This is who Democrat voters got behind more than anyone else. And I feel like that is a story that can be told over and over again, and he could be held up as an example. We could be very effective if we use this opportunity the right way.
Well, there was a moment, and this was back in May, where, even his extreme, in my opinion, very blatantly anti-Semitic language, conversations, comments, stances, right? Even that wasn't enough for somebody else who's obviously blatantly anti-Semitic. This was in May, but he was being called out for not being anti-Semitic enough. Take a look at this.
I have a question. What do you say about politicians that constantly reaffirm Israel's right to exist? Because people like me are constantly attacked by politicians for standing up for Palestine, and you are constantly defending the right for Israel to exist. My family is in Palestine right now, constantly under attack, and I'm hearing you say free Palestine, but also Israel has the right to exist. Don't be hypocritical. Don't be hypocritical and say free Palestine when you're also defending the right for Israel to exist. It does not have the right to exist. It does not have the right to exist. It's not your land to say it has the right to exist.
First of all, I'd like to know if that man is a citizen. If not, I think he should be deported immediately.
Sure.
I hope Secretary Rubio will look into that. That's not the kind of people we want in our country. But it also just goes to show, even when you are so far left and you are a communist and you are globalized the Intifada, it's still not enough for some of these people that I assume we've imported into our country.
No, it's not enough, and it's very scary stuff. But I'm just glad that these people are coming out in the open, because you would think this is not a mainstream conversation that you would have, that whether or not Israel is right to exist, and a Democrat standard bearer, the face of the party at the moment, would be, openly considering, well, maybe it shouldn't. I mean, that is something that is so far afield from anything we would have seen even 10 years ago in the Democratic Party. And I do believe that's where the party has gone. It's become a radical party. And I think it is becoming a regional metropolitan party filled with anti-Semites who are communists. And I think that is a really interesting development that gives a lot of potential for the Trump movement, which is a very populist movement, where we're adding people to the coalition, to the tent. We're adding on almost every major demographic. We're adding people to our coalition. And that opportunity gets bigger when they start thinking, well, maybe our problem is we're not radical enough. Maybe we should be talking about wiping Israel out. Maybe we should talk about no billionaires. Maybe we talk about government-run grocery stores like we're in Cuba or North Korea. If they want to throw those ideas out there, we're just going to keep running up the score, and our lives are going to get actually easier.
I hope you're right. I'm very concerned, though. I'm concerned because we're still importing people, legally and otherwise, and we still have these elite liberal indoctrination institutions all around this country in some form or facet. Pretty much every university is this way, churning out little militants. And that concerns me. The last thing I want to talk to you about is something I think is kind of fun, but it's right in line with the whole capitalism thing. So all weekend long, we saw people just absolutely crapping on the Bezos wedding. People are very mad that he spent, I think it was estimated $50 million on this wedding in Venice. Ivanka Trump was there. The Kardashians was there. Leonardo DiCaprio was there. Oprah was there. I mean, you name it, they were there. But there were some folks that were really pissed off that he had this very expensive wedding. They don't think that he should be able to use his money on an extravagant wedding. And again, this is just another page in the book of rich people should not have things, and they should not spend money on the things that they want to spend their money on. What's your take on it all and the spectacle that we saw?
Yeah, it's interesting how so many people were so angry about it, because you're free to not care. This is all stuff that, where I grew up in LA, this is very common that people would try to throw these huge events and try to get every celebrity to go. And then the tabloids would come and take photos of everyone. And it always seemed kind of meaningless and stupid to me, but that's okay. I always thought it was meaningless and stupid. I wasn't that upset about it. Like all these people online, like, what do you care? I mean, you weren't invited. You were never going to get invited. Let him, he is one of the biggest entrepreneurs of all time. And this is fun for him. And he gets to do that. Like, why do you care so much? And I think it says more about the people complaining online than it says about Bezos and the people who showed up. Just admit it. If you get invited, you would go. Like you would think, well, I wonder what's going on over there. Let's check it out. Like, why can't we check it out? I was picturing this. Like, what if I got a random invite? Because I saw some of these random celebrities that there's no way he knows that got invited. And I think, what must have been like for them to get the invitation? Like, I think we got invited to Bezos's wedding in Venice with a bunch of celebrities and stuff. We should go, right? Yeah, let's go. Let's check it out. Why not? Who cares? Have some fun. Can't we have fun?
I wish we could have fun. Well, here's what I think is such an interesting concept there, because people are mad. It seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, people don't like billionaires and wealthy people when they're business owners. But it seems to only be the business owners. They don't like Elon Musk, business owner, entrepreneur, genius. They don't like Jeff Bezos, again, entrepreneur, mogul. They don't like people, Donald Trump, of course. They don't like people who make their money, their millions or their billions in businesses, owning businesses, corporations. They don't like that. But I rarely hear them criticize people like Oprah, who's a billionaire, Rihanna, who is a billionaire, Jay-Z and Beyonce, billionaires, I believe, if you combine their worth. And all of these other people who make their money either through Hollywood or entertainment, they don't seem to get the same criticism as people who start giant industries that are transformative. Those are the people that always draw the ire of the we the people, right? They're so mad that these people have money. But we don't hear that same heat for the people who make their money, which what I would actually say is a more worthless way to make your money, which is entertainment. But that's okay to have money if you're an entertainer. Why is that?
There's a few lessons here that I'm seeing that I really find interesting. And these guys that are this successful, they just don't care what other people think. And you can see that with Musk. You can see it with Bezos, both of whom I have mixed opinions of personally. But you see them fight through some of these media cycles, and they're just they don't seem fazed by it. They just keep doing their thing. Bezos is smiling the whole time. And I find that to be very refreshing, because the media does try to bully people and pressure you into not being authentic. And we want authentic people. And that's how those guys got to be successful as they are. My neighbors across the street, I noticed their Tesla disappeared, and a electric Hyundai is now in the parking spot. And they're the type of people who put up the dorky signs like "We believe in science in this house," and "We believe that love is eternal," or those stupid signs. And so I know where their politics are. Them switching their Tesla out and going to that effort, but I'm sure they like their Tesla, says way more about them than it does about Musk. It just does. It shows them to be very insecure and very needy, and they need to rub themselves by switching out from Tesla to a foreign car company, the Hyundai. And it's just not a great look, and it's fine. Let them do it, so that now I know who not to talk to at the neighborhood block party next time.
Last thing I'll say on this, and I love to sometimes engage with randos on X about this and just, fight in the comments a little bit. Sometimes it's fun if I'm having a slow day. But I always remind folks, they don't seem to get it, right? They don't seem to get the fact that if he spends $50 million on a wedding or on any kind of a party or whatever, the number of people who are employed because he spends all that money on the wedding, you're talking the florists, you're talking the designers, you're talking the wait staff, you're talking the caterers, that stimulates an economy. And it's only a few day long event. And I can't imagine. Now, again, I wish that this was in America and not in Italy, but these people that have all this money that throw these, these really fancy, extravagant events, a lot of people make their livelihood off of people who spend a lot of money doing those things. And do they not get it that if you take away these extravagant events, all those people that make their money off the extravagant events would not have that easy paycheck? I don't know if they can compute it.
You're touching on something so important, which is the people talk about how, Twitter is not real life. But think about this in a broader sense, that we're moving in a direction where people's real persona is actually their online avatar, where people don't go outside. They don't have relationships. They're not making the same level of friendships. They're not touching grass. They're not exposed to the sunlight. People are staying at home, hunkered down behind their keyboards, and that's their real existence. And so when you see a guy doing something, you don't have to do any of this. There's nothing compelling Bezos to do all of this. But he says, we're going to do a destination wedding. We're going to do it halfway across the world. We're going to get every celebrity we can get is going to be there. They're all going to dress up. They're all going to have to fly in. They're all going to have to inconvenience themselves in a way. And we're going to put on something. We're going to try to make it good. Maybe it's not going to be good, but everyone's going to talk about it. That used to be something that was part of the American spirit, even if you can judge it. And I don't even like it that much, but it just gives you something to think about and talk about and do something. Now, all we do is just hunker down, just type. It's such a horrible existence, and we're getting all depressed over it. Oh, I'm sorry. And scroll. Let's not forget that. Get the scroliosis going. All these young people with mental health issues who are not going on dates, who can't socialize. It is a curse to be addicted to the computer so much. Get out and do something. Go get dressed up and go do something.
And preferably take a shower. before you go out. That's my one request. Alex,
Yes, that'd be nice.
Congratulations on yet another amazing book. Please do send me one. I got to
Yeah,
have
you
you
got
back
it.
on to break down everything in it. But you're just the absolute best, and you're always right on the money. So congratulations on your latest book, and please do come back so you can tell me all about it.
Anytime, Tommy, I always have a blast on these shows.
Thanks so much. All right, folks, I will say it again. New York City is a lost cause, but the fact that white liberals are propping up a Muslim anti-Semitic communist for mayor is really, really disturbing, and I have some final thoughts. So let's be real. New York City will likely still be a hellhole, even if New Yorkers are halfway smart enough not to elect communist Mamdani as their mayor. But let me tell you what, if y'all are, in fact, dumb enough to do that, you're on your own. That guy is not just a proud socialist, he's a communist. And I'm not saying that as just a buzzword to throw around. The man is a communist.
You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of them.
When he says equality, what he means is everyone should get poorer at the same rate. I'd also note this pipsqueak comes from a rich family. His dad is a professor at Columbia, also likely an America-hating communist. His mom is a filmmaker, also likely an America-hating communist. But I want to tell you why this is so concerning to me, and it's not just for the sake of New York City. It bothers me that such a large majority of, let's just be honest, rich, white, liberal, trust fund babies support not only Mamdani, but this concept that if the government owns and controls everything, we'll all be better off. That's literally communism, and as someone who has fled from communism, it not only doesn't work, it's ugly and it's oppressive. These overly educated, stupid people, some who I assume are well-meaning, think if the government controls your housing, your transportation, your grocery stores, and regulates or price controls all private business, we'd all be more equal. What that really means is that you and everyone who exists under that system is completely beholden to the government for all of your needs. How do you think that ends for you? When the government or the city decides you don't need this or you don't need that, or when the government decides they are entitled to what you have and tells you you don't need to have it. And if you don't give it up, you're either imprisoned, murdered, or best case scenario, they take away the things they so generously provide for you, like those free buses, the free childcare and housing, and access to items in the city-owned grocery stores. You can be free, or you can be dependent on the oh-so-generous government, but you can't be both. And the fact this Mamdani guy has mainstreamed that concept and sold it to so many is terrifying. It should make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Then add in he's also credibly accused of anti-Semitism and has previously praised backers of Hamas. And damn, New York, are you out of your mind? You know, we've seen a lot of treasonous Democrats who advocate for open borders, free things, defunding the police, champagne socialism, but they are nothing like this Mamdani character. He is dangerous, and while I know the rest of the country is too smart to fall for this trick, I'm horrified that America's largest and most populous city may not be. Get it together. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern for Liberal Tuesday right here in studio. Also, catch full episodes of the show on Outkick and Fox Nation. Please do like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.